government or national security? Brannon brings the issues of the day into clear focus through the lens of a Judeo-Christian worldview. And now, here is your host, Brannon Howse.
And welcome to the broadcast on this Friday night, April 4th, 2025. We're going to be joined by Neil McCabe, our D.C. correspondent, because we have a great emergency decision by the U.S. Supreme Court, a 5-4 decision in favor of Donald J. Trump. You need to hear about that tonight. Then we're going to go to an interview with Hadia. She's a former Muslim, worked in government, trying to deal with terrorism, Islamic terrorism, became a Christian, and is now a bold defender of Christianity, but also openly talking about the dangers of Islam, what it will do to our country. And I specifically tonight want to talk to her about all of these Islamic compounds and neighborhoods and planned communities being built. One in California, I'm going to show you for the first time tonight, a big, huge mosque. And then, of course, Irvine, Texas, Dallas, Epic, they're in Plano. I'm talking about all of that. And then Candace Owens. Is this lady unhinged a little bit? We are going to show you some video clips by her defending one of the guys that's been out there promoting the Palestinian movement, the Hamas movement. And he's not even from here, folks. And she somehow claims that we are damaging his right to free speech. Well, he's not even a citizen. He's not even a citizen. And what is he doing over here? Is he trying to underpin our constitutional republic or incite groups and encourage groups and give credibility to groups that are seeking to bring down our Western culture? We'll talk about Candace Owens and what she's been saying and doing. Also, Tucker Carlson. He now, again, has interviewed another person he shouldn't be interviewing, this time a guy who was from Minnesota who's now moved here to Tennessee, a pastor who is taking on dispensationalists and those of us who are Christian Zionists. Of course, apparently this guy believes the rapture happened back in AD 70, or is at least a partial preterist. So, got a lot to talk about with her tonight. And then former Congressman Steve King is going to join us. He basically got the Trump treatment before people knew about the Trump treatment. He was called all kinds of things, white supremacist, all kinds of horrible things. And the Uniparty apparently couldn't buy him. They couldn't buy him off. They couldn't control him. So apparently the Uniparty just had to use a article. There was a journalist, so-called, interviewing him that apparently wasn't recorded, and then have him saying something he never said. We're going to talk about that. And then the destruction of our Western culture, our foundation as a nation, a republic, the battle that still wages. Many things he was fighting for that Donald Trump is now doing. Stephen King, as a congressman, was doing this several years in advance and really helped to lay the foundation in many ways for the MAGA movement. I want to talk to him about a lot of that tonight. So a big show tonight. Now, before we go and do these interviews, and many of them are long format interviews again tonight, before we do that, let me remind you, we are brought to you by you. Please go to worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. I do like the 1776 coffee, folks. It is not sprayed. It is organic. Go to worldviewcoffee.shop, worldviewcoffee.shop. Get a subscription and get your coffee every month. They got creamers and all kinds of stuff. Logan likes the protein. He's got the creamers there, the protein. That's there. Of course, we got the Melissa Howse GPA. That's the Gatatana. Memberships to this have spiked. And well, they should, because this is the phytoplankton that is so good for you, loaded with protein, amino acids, a lot of the trace minerals that we need. Remember, we give Dolly, she gets a half a scoop every morning on her food. I personally give it to her. One scoop is equivalent of 90 billion plant cells, 5 clinical trials behind it. We always show you Binks, the cat that had a tumor in its eye. They put it on Gatatana. Bye-bye. Remember the guy that developed this? He was actually raising it for his shellfish. They gave him a terminal diagnosis. He started eating it. His daughter was like, "What are you doing? This is for shellfish." They went in, did a surgery on it, looked at his lungs, did biopsies, took out 11 samples, sent them off, all came back benign. He went on to live until his 80s, another 10 years. When they were told him, they originally told him, you only got a little bit of time to live, and it's lights out. So he started eating the phytoplankton that he was raising for shellfish. Well, that led to David Hunter further researching this and then starting Global Plankton Alliance. Folks, this is serious stuff here. I drink it every day. You see me drink it at the news desk. So please check it out. Howse, Melissa Howse, GPA.com, Melissa Howse, GPA.com. Again, the memberships for this have spiked. In fact, just bring that down real quick and let me bring up another, let me bring up this here. This is the article about the guy that developed it. This was back in July of 2006. Man figures plankton stopped his rare cancer. Full article up in Canada. I'm not making claims. I'm just telling you what his story is. And David Hunter worked with him. And that's how we end up with MelissaHouseGPA.com today. So do what I do what Melissa does. We drink this every day. We also take Bella Grace every day. Now, I thought Melissa would make an appearance tonight, but it did not fit into her busy schedule. But we'll try to get her on here next week. No, that's still the plankton. Let me go over to the Bella Grace. Here we go. Let's go to Bella Grace, and that is right there. We'll click that. That'll open up the old Bella Grace page, which is MelissaHouseBG.com. Of course, by the way, if you want to become a distributor, a lot of you have. Some of you are making good money being a distributor, which means you just simply do what we do. Talk about it. Tell your friends about it. It's easy to talk to people about this because it has 80 clinical trials behind it. There is science behind this elixir. There it all is. And it, of course, the elixir is loaded with 3 powerful ingredients: collagen, peptides cut short so your body can absorb it, the astaxanthin, which crosses the brain-blood barrier that takes on the free radicals, and the cat's claw, that's an anti-inflammatory from a bark on a vine out of Peru. Melissa loves the skincare. She loves the weight management. This is the Bella Trim. This is all natural, but it's also great for your cardiac health. And again, Melissa loves it too, what it's done to her face. It's really helped to sculpt her face, particularly the jawline. And a lot of people are like, "You've lost a lot of weight, Melissa." And she's like, "No, I really haven't. I've just got on my Bella Grace elixir and then the Bella Trim, which is really, I guess, taking some inflammation out of her face, made her jawline more pronounced. And but she's getting a lot of compliments about it. That's why I want to bring her on, let you guys see her. But we'll get that done hopefully next week. But this is also great for your cardio health. Logan's taking Bella Trim as well. It also takes on the stubborn belly fat, according to studies. She does take 2 of these every night, this restorative sleep. In fact, should we go to the Dolly cam? It almost looks like Dolly is on it right now. She's not. She's on nothing but her food and her Gatatana, but you would swear she was on the restorative sleep right now. She's like lights out, hanging off the My Pillow pet bed. I don't know, maybe the Dolly cam, the Dolly cam's not working tonight, I guess. I don't know, kind of outfit are we running here, guys? Kind of Cracker Jack program are we running? I don't know. That still doesn't do it, boys. That just doesn't do it. Well, tried. She's hanging right off the bed. But Melissa takes the Bella Grace restorative sleep, 2 gummies, help her stay asleep every night. So she's using a lot of their products: the restorative sleep, the Bella Trim, the skincare, and the elixir. Get a subscription to all of this and save. Get a subscription and save. MelissaHouseBG.com, MelissaHouseBG.com. All right, joining me now is our D.C. correspondent, Neil McCabe. Got a lot to talk about. Big victory tonight. Take a look at this. Supreme Court shuts down activist judge, lets Trump cut $250 million in diversity, equity, and inclusion training. That's cultural Marxism for teachers. I wonder how Mr. John Roberts decided.
You could.
Yeah.
Am I on?
I'm sorry. You're on.
I just jumped in.
Yeah, you're on.
He voted with the minority.
Of course he did. There it is. Justices Jackson, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Chief Justice Roberts all dissenting.
Yeah, and what's interesting is here's a guy who used to say, "I'm going to call balls and strikes," and he's a guy who also tries to make his decisions as narrow as possible, especially if he's involved in a conservative victory. He will work to make that conservative victory as narrow as possible, so it only applies to that case or a small number of cases. If he's involved in a left-wing victory, he wants it as expansive and universal as possible. This is an interesting case for me because the trial judge, Mong Jun in Boston, he, in his order, he said, this is a bad policy. This will hurt students. This will hurt schools. This will hurt the laudable goal of diversity. And it's like, hey, hold on, judge. Maybe you should run for president. The judge is supposed to decide due process. Did they follow the the Administrative Procedures Act? Did they get the proper signature on it? It's like, was this done correctly? Does the president have the authority to do this delegated by Congress? In fact, in case of the education department, the liberals have always given great discretion to the Secretary of Education because they didn't want to vote on any of this stuff because they just wanted the Secretary of Education to do all this left-wing stuff without having them accountable. And so they're being, it's sort of bouncing back on them. But what June was saying is he's saying this was bad policy. And then the appellate court also said, you're right, this is bad policy. Well, they're not supposed to decide bad policy. They're supposed to decide, was the law followed? And is this consistent with the spirit of the Constitution? Was the Constitution present when this decision was made? Or was it done outside of the Constitution? That's supposed to be their role. And here you got, once again, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, which is interesting because I'm reading that this judge is kind of known for being progressive, liberal, helping progressive activists, doesn't like Trump.
I hope there are more decisions like this. It'd be very interesting to see what happens. The Supreme Court should be Trump's playground. And Robert seems to be opposed to that. And frankly, that's one of the reasons why Roberts needs to be impeached. Forget impeaching the district court judges. Though, I mean, that's a good idea. Why not? Why not? So it's not like Jim Jordan's been busy doing anything lately. He could probably get off the dime, maybe impeach a judge or two. I remember it's like Jordan was one of the guys who blocked the Freedom Caucus from impeaching the IRS commissioner who had lied to Congress and destroyed evidence. And I don't remember a time in American history when attacking the IRS commissioner was risky in any way politically. But somehow, like, the IRS commissioner was one of the most hated men in America. But Jordan stood up against his fellow Freedom Caucus members and said, no, we're not going to do this. And so, it's very interesting to see what's going to happen because, Jordan should be holding these judges accountable. Jordan should be using his subpoena power. Jordan should be entertaining these impeachments of judges. Jordan should be the one. Mike Johnson said that Congress controls the lower courts. We should control their budget, move them around, let the judges know that Congress is their boss. Well, where is he? Where is the guy? I don't know.
Well, let's jump to another story. You and I are both friends.
Yeah.
You and I are both friends with Laura Loomer, and she's all over the news. The USA Today, conspiracy theorist. Okay. Laura Loomer hints at more Trump firings on her claims of disloyalty. Okay, so she's all over the news today because apparently she was allowed to go to the White House and brief the president with some of these guys in the room. It's like, these people aren't loyal. Conspiracy theorist? Yeah.
You mean like the conspiracy that Trump was working with the Russians? Is that the conspiracy?
That's a very good point. The media that bought that conspiracy accuses those who defend President Trump of conspiracy, but they had no problem with conspiracy theories when pushing the Russia conspiracy.
You mean the Russians created the Hunter Biden laptop? That conspiracy?
Right.
That was a wild one.
Woo.
So whatever.
Can you imagine being in the Oval Office when Laura Loomer is supposedly standing there presenting these facts? Would that have been fun or what?
Well, Laura Loomer she's beautiful and intelligent and tenacious.
She is.
And I would never put myself on the other side of Laura Loomer. I interviewed her when I was at Breitbart, at One American News. and a number of times at One American News. And she was always gracious to me. She was always funny and smart. And I've always enjoyed just interacting with her, not really in a professional sense. And then when I was at Project Veritas, before that whole thing collapsed, she was considered a legend. If there was a Project Veritas Hall of Fame for undercover journalists, she would be in the Hall of Fame there because of the stories she broke. And to break good stories like that, you have to know where to look, and you have to be very, very smart. That's the thing about Laura. You have to be very, very smart. And what she did is she went in and she made her pitch to Trump about these staffers at the White House, and apparently also the general who's in charge of the National Security Agency and Cyber Command. And, Trump is not some pushover. Like, the idea that you could just walk into the President Trump's office and say, sir, I need you to fire these 6 people and this general. And you'd be like, okay, Laura, thank you. No. Like, the way they tell this story, you'd swear that Laura Loomer had cast some kind of spell. No, she's wicked smart. And she has the facts, and she does the research. Please, look at what she did to DeSantis when DeSantis ran against Trump in the primary. Look at the people who have been on the wrong side of Laura Loomer. She has destroyed them with facts. And facts can be very resilient, Brannon.
Yeah, they can. Now, Waltz is not one of the 6 that's been let go yet, right?
Yeah, and apparently he was able to save the job of Alex Wong. And so, he'll live to fight another day. But I think that is more of a case of Trump doesn't want to give the press a scalp. And he's haunted that he was railroaded by Mike Pence into firing Mike Flynn as the national security advisor. And so he then had, McMaster, H.R. McMaster, and then horribly, John Bolton, a guy who before he was fired was basically setting up Trump's first impeachment. He was part of that sort of cabal that was working against Trump policies. And then finally with Admiral Robert O'Brien, he found somebody who was squared away. But the feeling is like, hey, Walz is a retired lieutenant colonel. He's a congressman. He's popular on Capitol Hill. People like him. He was a Green Beret. He served on the national security staff under President Bush. And so, he has some substance. Unfortunately, the signal call and other things went down and he brought in some people that maybe he shouldn't. And, that's on him. I think he survives through the end of this term, but we'll see. I mean, remember, one of the reasons why he's at the White House is that Trump needed to clear the field for Byron Donalds to run for governor of Florida. Mike Walz was going to run for governor of Florida, and so there's many dominoes, that are being that are knocked over now that Trump is president.
Indeed. All right. Your broadcast airs on Saturday and Sunday, right, Logan?
7 in the East.
I won't even mention the Central Time because it's irrelevant.
Well, Central Time. It's just like, what is that? Seriously, what is that? Who are these people?
Of course, we've also made the announcement, but we should tell everybody here at the Big Prime Time Show, you will be taking a leave till December. You have a big project. We can't disclose what, but after people find out what project you're working on, people will go, well, of course he had to step aside for a few months to take care of this. God bless him. What a patriot. So everything's fine. The plan is for you to be back in December after this project that will take all of your attention and then some is completed.
Yeah, and part of that, Brannon, is that I have to shut down sort of my retail media operation. And this black market career, like there's much to shut down anyway, but this black market journalism career that I've been running for the last 2 decades. But we're going to have to shut it down for the greater good, as they say. And and this project should be over in December, and then we can fire things up with the Washington desk, literally in Washington.
Yep.
And with all the plans that we have, and obviously, well, you know what the project is, but Brannon, you understand that this project will also grease the skids, as they say, for our future endeavors, sir.
Yeah, that's what we're praying, and it is very important what he's going to do. So pray for Neil. Pray for Neil and this project, because if he's successful at it, it means good things for the country. So thank you, Neil. But anyways, the last program is this week until December, 7 Eastern, Saturday and Sunday, right? Both days.
Yeah, and all the other time zones. Figure it out.
Figure it out. Figure it out. All right. All right. Well, Neil McCabe, a great patriot and a good guy. Neil, thank you, my friend. Neil checking in tonight, giving us an update on this big decision, emergency decision by the Supreme Court. Good win for President Trump. All right, joining me now is Hadia. She is going to be a keynote speaker at our banquet, our national conference that we hold every year on that Thursday night. She's going to be the keynote speaker for it. You can register for it now at worldviewstore.com. We just opened it up for you this evening. We have 350 seats available at our national conference on Friday night and Saturday. We have about 100 sold already, so we have 250 seats available, okay? We've moved it to the Mid-South. We got our costs down by doing that, and we're passing the savings on to you. We've lowered our ticket price back down to $99. All we're trying to do is break even with our national conference. We don't try to make money on the national conference. We just try to break even, but we do take a big offering for the foundation. So that's what we're counting on. We want a lot of our regular supporters to show up. So we have 250 seats left for the main conference. And then Thursday night before the conference, the banquet we do every year, our formal banquet. And Hadia is going to be one of our keynote speakers. She joins us, and we're glad to have her back to talk about Candace Owens, all of these Islamic compounds and planned communities being built in Dallas, Plano, Irving, Texas, California, all over the place. Talk about that and much more. Hadia, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm super excited to be at the national conference, and it's going to be a great honor. Thank you.
Well, we're honored. For those who maybe don't remember, because we just had you on once, so we're still introducing you to a lot of our audience. For those maybe who didn't see my last interview with you, give our audience a quick bio sketch of yourself, please.
Sure. I worked for 20 plus years for the U.S. government and national security. I was dealing with the threat of Islamic radicalization, both in the United States and abroad. Worked under 5 separate presidential administrations, traveled to 37 countries. My career culminated at FBI headquarters, where I was scaling and replicating a terrorism prevention program that I had built in the private sector. And during that time, I decided to take my head cover off, and the religion absolutely unraveled. I left Islam and just lost without a relationship with God. And I followed a tweet from a girl who said Jesus changed her life, and I was hooked. I actually met the Lord Jesus Christ on YouTube.
Wow. And now you go to the church of Pastor Jack Hayford and spoke with him recently, and that's how I found out about you. So my editor, who heard you being interviewed by Jack Hayford.
Jack Hibbs.
Jack Hibbs. Sorry, Jack Hayford. Jack Hayford.
Yes.
Jack Hayford's gone on to Jack's gone on to be with the Lord. Jack Hayford has. Sorry, Pastor Hibbs. So sorry about that.
He's
there you
still
go.
With us.
What's that? Yes, your pastor is still with us. Yeah. Church on the Way is who I'm thinking of. He's the one that wrote that song, Majesty, Worship His Majesty, Jack Hayford, years and years ago. Jack Hibbs, he is still very much with us. All right, sorry about that. But yeah, that's how we found out about you, being interviewed by him.
Yes, thank you. I am so grateful for his spiritual covering. When I first came to faith, I went to see him and to tell him my testimony, and I asked him to be my spiritual covering, and he said, absolutely. He's like, you're going to need it. So if anybody comes to question your faith, you bring them to me. So it's really been such a blessing. There's been very, very difficult times, personally, professionally, but he's been there for me the entire time. I'm super grateful to him and to the community at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, as you know, because I sent you some videos, we've been covering all of these planned Islamic communities. Plano, Texas, Epic by Dr. Yasser Qadi. And then we have one in Irving, Texas. We played last night. Gentleman is riding around on his motorcycle, giving a tour. It even includes the name of the one of the streets. Now, Ali Akbar is the name of one of the streets, not Allah Akbar, but Ali, which is very interesting because I was asking you about that. Tell our audience what you make of that being one of the names of the streets in Irving, Texas, in this Islamic community where they have the mosque and everything. What do you make of Ali Akbar as the name of a street?
Well, what I found super interesting about that is that Ali Akbar is a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad that follows down the line of the Shia Imams. And so nobody would name a street that way unless they were a Shia. So my inclination is to believe this community is a Shia community, and it would be rare to have a Shia Sunni community mixed. I mean, the epicenter is clearly Sunni because of Yasser Qadhi's involvement and the other people in that mosque. So I'm curious whether this is a competition between the two factions and whether they're going to be developing separate communities. But to me, that's a strong indication that it's a Shia community.
Which Shia or Shiite, this would be more, people think, aligned with like Iran, Sunni more aligned
Iran.
with Saudi Arabia.
Exactly. So people know a lot about like Wahhabi Islam and Jihadi Islam, the 9/11 terrorists. That's all Sunni sects. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, Hamas, everybody talks about Hamas being supported by Iran, but originally they were Sunni and they were supported by the Middle Eastern Sunni governments. Historically, we understood Hezbollah to be controlled by Iran, but now more recently, Hamas has gotten a lot of support from Iran as well.
Mm-hmm. For October 7th, for instance.
Right, exactly. And even though they are predominantly a Sunni jihadist group.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's one of these going on. I haven't shown this one yet. The audience will be seeing this, at least on my broadcast, for the first time. They're building one of these in California as well. Take a look at this.
Oh.
The whole Bay Area can be seen from
Bay
here.
Area.
Brothers and sisters, subhanAllah, look where we are right now. That is the evergreen Islamic.
Now, this looks like the same. It sounds like the same guy. He's got his motorcycle. I don't know if he's actually ridden from Texas all the way to California, but it sure sounds like the same gentleman. Here we go.
Center, the one on Tully Road in the Bay Area. If you remember, the brother who gave a beautiful story, Champion Masjid in Spring, Texas. He used to live here, one of the founders of this masjid, subhanAllah, before he moved there and he built the Champion Masjid. And Allahu Akbar, what a magnificent, massive masjid here in the Bay Area. I can't believe we're here, brothers and sisters. Look, the legacy. Brother, this is your legacy. May Allah bless you.
This is my second experience building or working for the masjid. One I did that in California. If you go to California, San Jose, Tully Road, I was talking to the gentleman from there. Now that masjid is 3-story high.
All the way in Houston, Texas, and all the way here in the Bay Area. Subhanallah. Look at this beauty. Look at this beautiful complex here on the top of the hill. This is special, brothers and sisters. This is unbelievable. May Allah bless you, brother, and all the brothers and sisters who have been building these masajid all over the nation.
Mosques are the anchors of our communities, because wherever a mosque has been built in the 60s, 70s, 80s in a new community like in the United Kingdom, what you find over time is Muslims start living there. You get Muslim businesses, Muslim restaurants, Muslim charities, Quran clubs. The masjid anchors our entire community. I don't know if someone would think of the idea of ummatics if there were not a generation before us who provided us spaces like mosques as children to read the Quran and to realize that we are connected with others in this space, not through ethnicity, but through La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The mosque is the original identity former of this notion called ummah. Ummah is real. It gets created in real spaces.
So, Hadia, clearly they're planting this, and I think that might be the same gentleman on the motorcycle, because he makes reference back to being in Texas and Houston. Right. So we got Houston, we got Plano, we got Dallas, we got Irving, and of course some of these are suburbs of Dallas. We've got now California. We know we got one going in Lino Lakes, Minnesota, a big one there. I mean, these are going all over the country. And he says that this last gentleman we heard from saying, hey, once we get our mosque built, then the community builds up around it. You have your Quran clubs, you have your Muslim businesses, and we start to grow and everything goes from there. would you find it interesting that a gentleman working on building a mosque in Houston is now moved over to California? Do you think he's being appointed to go around the country and do these developments? Is he kind of making his way around or what?
Well, I'm sure you've done a number of episodes on like CARE and the National Muslim Organizations. So these organizations have existed, the national umbrella organizations have existed for decades in the United States. And so this networking of leaders across the country has been happening for a very long time. So the fact that the California community is connected to the Minnesota community, connected to Michigan, is not a surprise at all. But what I would like to address with your audience is, what do we do about it? Because once you're at the planning stage and everybody's screaming at a public hearing, it's too late. I think this problem goes back to the Christian malaise in public policy and in the public square. So what happened in our schools and, with the fight that you see going on in the school boards over leftist agendas and this transgenderism and boys and girls sports, all of this stuff and the rise of Islam is the result of Christians not taking territory for the kingdom. We're not planting the flag of Judeo-Christian values and saying, we are a Christian nation and we expect those values to be respected. Take, for example, public school education. The majority of public schools across the United States teach Islam. I actually watched over a dozen videos from kids that were converts to Islam from Christian homes that said they learned about Islam in school. Yet you learn about Islam in school, but you can't bring a Bible to school. So why are we teaching 5th and 6th graders Islam, but not teaching them about Christ? So why are they in religious studies class not having a class on Christianity? So we're just constantly seeding the public square where it gets to the point where now we have to fight them on discrimination laws. So I looked up a bunch of the laws that they're trying to fight now, Governor Abbott. At least it's a noble effort, I hope. But they'll come after the fair housing laws. You're discriminating. You're not allowing other people. And they say, no, we're not discriminating. We can allow other people. Anybody who wants to buy a house here can. Like, who's going to do that, right? In an entire Muslim community. Then they go after, did you deceive investors? So they're trying to go after the security laws and the financial crimes and that angle. But what happens is you will see these communities will get built. And what will happen is that this will damage Muslim women, and especially women like myself, who were in illegal polygamous relationships. And when you want to leave, you have a difficult time leaving, because then you've subjected yourself to a different set of laws. And can you imagine if they do that in the city and they can contract away their marital rights, their inheritance rights, their property rights. And then when those people want to leave and come over to the kingdom of Christ, they lose their children. They don't get child support. They can't inherit anything. And then you'll start to see apostasy laws being enforced, where there are honor killings and honor beatings of women who try to leave or to convert. This is happening all over Europe. I am now helping a dear friend of mine who just told her entire family in England she's a Christ, and her mom said her blood was halal, that she shouldn't live through the night. So I am now in the process of her out of the UK, because everywhere she goes, there are Muslim police. There are the mosques, the neighborhoods, the shops. Everybody can find her within a matter of days. And so this is what happens when we've ceded the public square to a foreign religion. I don't care what it is. In this case, it's Islam, but even if it's the left, when we cede the country to atheism and demonic activity and the occult, then we get boys and girls sports.
Absolutely. So you're also a trained attorney. So how do you think they're going to be able to go about this? Because you say they're going to try all these different ways, but it's not going to work. By the way, Logan, will you let our studio dog Dolly in? She's whining outside the studio door. What would you recommend? I mean, from a legal perspective, what you think is the best chance they have for stopping this?
Honestly, I don't really know, unless there was some kind of fraud that happened, unless they don't allow non-Muslims to live there. I think what I'm most concerned about that I hope they don't allow is we actually have a system where you could subject yourself by contract to waive your rights, your contractual rights. So I hope they review those contracts and make sure that families and people are not subjecting themselves to Sharia. Like I said, the inheritance, property, marriage, apostasy, so that we're not trapping people in these communities with no way of getting out. Other than that, discrimination laws, they'll look at Title VII things, but I think that the Muslims are probably got this pretty figured out. I think it's really going to come back to what is the rest of the community going to do to prevent these kinds of things in the future.
And this is going on also in Lino Lakes, Minnesota. Here we go. I don't know. I'm going to watch this for the first time with you guys. We have to sit through an ad first. But I just found, as you were just talking, I just popped it into YouTube and I found it. And I have family and friends up in Minnesota, up in the Twin Cities, and they're talking about it a lot. And here we go. Here's the latest news report I can find on this one. What's that? If anybody wants to know what this looks like in real time, go visit Southall. In the outskirts of England, or go to Manchester, or go to Birmingham in England. This is what happens. And we can't just keep ceding territory to beliefs that are outside of our values. And that happens when we just don't secure our own position in society. I'd like to commend President Trump on the National Prayer Breakfast. He announced, I was there, he announced that he's going to have a task force for the protection of Christians, also making sure that we reverse the discrimination of those that are trying to pray outside of abortion centers and opening and protecting pregnancy centers, like all these initiatives where Christians start to raise their voice. But Brannon, if Christians don't stand up and try to raise the voice of Christian believers and try to promote our values, then none of this legislation is going to matter because we're not doing enough to support our own community. Indeed. Okay, here's CCO in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Here we go.
And tonight, an environmental review board will consider a controversial project in Lino Lakes. Now, housing and businesses are proposed, but it's a mosque that's getting attention.
And neighbors last night packed a meeting urging city council members to consider a moratorium. Our Pauline Lee joins us live in the newsroom with a closer look at some of the concerns. Pauline.
Hi, guys. Yeah, residents seem to be divided on this issue. Those opposed say their concerns are environmental, while those in favor of the project say the pushback they're getting stems from Islamophobia. Now, public comments at last night's meeting lasted for at least an hour at the packed city council meeting, which got heated at times. Half the room held signs that said slow the grow, the other half saying we support the Medina Lakes project. Developers say the project would turn 156 acres of sod farm into a Muslim-friendly community in the city. Supporters of the moratorium say they're concerned with water resources, traffic, and overcrowding. Others say to press pause on this project would be discrimination.
Just find it to be a very important thing for us to stand together and allow our brothers and sisters who worship differently to have their ability to worship in their expression just as the Roman Catholics do.
If this is truly about religion, then please point out where any Lino Lakes residents has made one negative comment about their faith or culture. I'll wait.
Council did not make a decision on whether to impose a moratorium at last night's meeting. Tonight's project presentation in front of the Environmental Review Board, that's happening at 6:30. And the project developers have invited everyone to come and learn more about the project. There is, by the way, a petition online against the project that has more than 2,000 signatures on it. There's also a petition for the project.
All right, I bet. This is going on all over the country, all over. And of course, here you have the Roman Catholic guy getting up there. I was anticipating that to be some liberal Lutheran, because but then again, you see the Catholic charities, the Lutheran charities, the evangelical so-called charities, all involved in opening our borders. And they're getting all this NGO, non-government money,
hundreds of millions,
billions, right? Billions. And
yes, I was a subcontractor for one of those settlement agencies, so I know exactly how that process works.
What do you want to say about it?
It's a racket. It's a racket. I mean, they get $2,500 a head for each immigrant, and they give them $500 of it, and they live in abject poverty. We were a social services subcontractor for them, trying to provide services to the Afghan refugees. And one of our clients got jumped and mugged and ended up in the hospital. And he said, you know what? I'd rather go and survive the Taliban than continue living here. It was a horrible condition. They're put in these slums, in these ghettos, because they make deals with the landlords to provide cheap rent because they don't have any credit. They have no way of learning the language. They're put with other people in the community that speak the same language, so they never learn English to an extent to be able to get a job. They end up in a life of crime. That's what we see in Minnesota. That's what we see in a lot of these other ghettos in Maryland, in DC. And as a result, they never become integrated into American society. And these charities that are run by either the Catholic charities, there's a couple of Jewish ones, some of them are secular, they keep advocating for these programs because they're making money off of these programs. One of the most important initiatives I think we have is controlling and stopping immigration, at least the way it was, and have a robust system.
Logan, can you let Congressman King know we're running a little bit behind? I don't have my phone. Someone stole my phone. So if someone could let the congressman know I'm running a little behind. I have the database, the Rolodex. My phone has all the numbers for the most part on them. Although Logan's phone is starting to he's starting to outpace me. So, but someone on our team is constantly grabbing one of my phone and then I feel like I don't know. Sense. I have zero control now about anything. I can't even text them. Can't even text them into the control room, tell them I need help out here. Don't do this, call this person. So they've taken away my communication out here other than just do it like I just did. But anyway, we'll get Congressman King on here in just a minute. But first, folks, I want to go to Candace Owens, because again, she just is constantly going after the Jews, the state of Israel. Now she's really going after the Trump administration. Before she claims President Trump now is just a puppet of Benjamin Netanyahu. I'll play that in a minute. But first, set this one up. She's going after Mohammed Khalil. Not going after him, but she's defending him. Tell her, remind our audience about this student that the Trump administration wants to get out of the country, working to do that because of what he's been doing and leading and promoting. She's defending him. Before I play that, set it up for us, will you?
Yeah, sure. So we had all of these protests. They were extremely, at times, very violent and vicious against the Jewish students on campus. Prime example was at Columbia, and they were passing out pro-Hamas literature, screaming from the river to the sea, preventing Jewish kids from going to class. They were kicked, beaten, pushed in the hallways. Some of them feared for their lives and didn't come back to class. Property was damaged. Rooms were destroyed. And afterwards, when they found out that now, since the Trump administration is come into office, they found out one of these guys was a green card holder that resulted from a student visa and that they were going to deport him. And Candace Owens has just gone bananas and says, this is just like the Biden administration did against Catholics and against moms at school board meetings. And we can't have this kind of, non-transparent criminalization of free speech. And that's absolutely not what's happening. The government has plenty of evidence of how this gentleman supported Hamas. We have Hamas is a foreign terrorist organization. It is designated by the State Department as an FTO, and there are legal consequences to supporting Hamas in this country. Plus, Secretary Rubio laid out under immigration law, they had a right to deport anyone that was advocating for goals that would severely damage our foreign policy and national security interests. So they had laid out the reasons, and she just kept screaming that they have no justification. And so Candace can have whatever opinion of Netanyahu that she wants, but her kind of virulent anti-Zionist stance is just very unchristian. She keeps attaching it to being a Christian, and these are my Christian values, and I want to protect Palestinian babies because I'm a Christian, and yet she has no respect for the role that Israel and the Jewish people play in the Bible. We have a Old Testament and a New Testament in one Bible. And the Lord is very, very clear about how he feels about Israel. That doesn't mean you have to like Netanyahu, but you have to have respect for God's eternal timeline as he lays it out and as he has passed this covenant to God's people. Then we have the church age, but then God returns back to his covenant with the Jewish people and with Israel, and that will be resolved. But she just is, I don't know. She's just so hostile. And I don't know at this point if it's just for likes and comments on her social media, like she's gotten a lot of attention as a result of it, or she truly believes some of the nonsense that she spouts.
And I want to play this clip, but, on radio today, I just found out live on the air today that Tucker Carlson just had a pastor on from Minnesota who's now moved to my state of Tennessee, is building a compound or something. And he was on trashing dispensationalism. They're trashing people that believe in the rapture of the church. I mean, this is like strike 4 or 5 for Tucker. He had on, what was it, Munther, whatever his name is, out of Christ at the Checkpoint in Bethlehem, that where Jim Wallace and Bill Hybels' wife goes and takes up the cause of the Christian Palestinians against the Jews. Yes. And Tucker's interviewing the guy from that church. He's interviewing all of these different people, but he never brings on anyone to offer the other side and say, well, wait a minute, let me take you to the scripture and show you the scripture in context. Turns out the guy he just interviewed, I think, is at least a partial preterist, thinks a lot of these scriptures related to Israel were done and completed in AD 70 with the fall of Rome, etc. When Rome sacked Jerusalem. So Nero was the Antichrist, et cetera, et cetera. So Tucker doesn't ever seem to want to have on anyone else to say, but maybe you ought to consider this. So it seems to be between, and by the way, I think Tucker is getting funded by some Muslim dude. Wasn't Tucker's network being funded by a Muslim dude? Folks should look that.
I did not know that.
Oh, you didn't know that? I'll bring that news. Oh, I'll bring that news story up. Yeah. Let me bring that up.
Because he interviewed a bunch of leaders from Qatar and Saudi. I was actually Prince Talal, who I consider the Grim Reaper of Saudi Islam. He interviewed him and one of the princes of Qatar. So I don't find that surprising, considering he has that level of access.
Yeah, well, and I'll find it here, and people can look it up. But we've shown several examples where he's getting his funding from for his new. Here we go.
And they're both Catholic, by the way, so it kind of coincides that their worldview point is similar.
Oh. Tucker Carlson's Outline Media Company just raised $15 million in seed capital. This is from back in 2023. And here's the guy's name, Ameed Malak. Through his newly launched 1789 Capital boutique investment firm, has invested $15 million in seed capital into Last Country, the startup funded by Tucker Carlson and Neil Patel, according to the Wall Street Journal. And people can go. They can go research Mr. Ameed Malik, which we've done and talked about him several times. So one has to wonder what is going on in conservative media. It's very, very sad. But
it really is.
Here, let me go back to Candace. Here we go. Here's what Candace has had to say about Mohammed Khalil. Here we go.
Via a tweet yesterday that he had arrested a person named Mahmoud Khalil. Then the White House blared this out across their social media pages, writing, "Shalom, Mahmoud. He had completed work on his master's degree from Columbia University in December, but he's a legal resident of the United States, okay? He is a green card holder. That is very different from somebody who is here on a student visa, okay? So he was arrested and detained by federal agents after his lawyer said that his green card was revoked by the Trump administration, despite the fact that he hadn't been arrested for engaging in illegal protests. I'm looking at the details. I'm looking for the details, and I'm happy to correct this report if more comes out. But don't put that on us. We can't just be kicking out legal permanent residents because they've spoken in ways that we disagree with. If he called for death, murder, the slaughter of children, I'm willing to partner with you. But at this moment, I don't see it.
Wow. Mahmoud, I guess is his name, so I got it wrong. There goes Mahmoud. So she's defending him big time.
Repeatedly.
Mm-hmm. She doesn't seem to have any compassion for the Jewish students that were tracked down, chased down, accosted, having all these anti-Semitic slurs in their face. Have you ever heard her condemn any of this?
Not once. And actually, in the longer interview, she references that she did a whole podcast on it, which I watched. And she actually says, you're hurting the Jewish students. You're just making more criticism against them that they're being protected. And I was like, what kind of nonsense is that? Like, how do you, it's a clear violation of equal protection under the law when you do not allow Jewish students to go to school. That is absolutely horrific that in 2024 and 25 in this country, the level of anti-Semitism against Jewish students is so high they don't feel safe to go to school. That's just disgusting to me. And the fact that she has absolutely no empathy for that and is taking the side of a guy who's obviously been very virulent in his ideas. There's a bunch of quotes from him. There's his activity in the leadership organization. He was the chief negotiator between Columbia and the student groups to get them to stop their protests. And yet, they want to hide the obvious and say, well, there's no evidence. He hasn't been arrested. You're making this up. It's very disappointing. It's really disappointing that, and as you said, the conservative media seems to be dividing in some. Honestly, it looks like very theological grounds. It seems like it's fracturing along theological grounds. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Have you ever seen conservative talk radio and TV so interested in talking about the Bible? I've been doing that. I haven't. I've been doing this 35 years. Okay. I didn't have, quote, competition. I still don't. But I didn't have competition from conservative talk radio, conservative talk TV when it came to talking about the Bible. Now, all of a sudden, Candace and Tucker and so many of these people, they seem obsessed with all of a sudden talking about the Bible. But what they're doing is trying to crowbar twisted scripture to justify their worldview. But again, if we want to go back to hermeneutics, the study of the Bible in its, purpose and intent, and you've already done this now by just talking about we have the Old Testament, we have the Lord dealing with the Old Testament prophets, then we have 400 years of silence, then we have the New Testament, then we have the disciples who become the apostles, then we have the laying down the foundational doctrine of the church, then we have the church in the book of Acts, now we're in the church age, then after the church is removed, then we go into the tribulation period, now we have tribulation saints, and we're in a new dispensation, and now new things are happening. You have an angel, multiple angels flying across the sky. One of them warning about not taking the mark of the beast. Another warning about proclaiming what is the gospel. We have two witnesses in Jerusalem shutting up the heavens from raining and fire coming out of their mouth.
And the 120,000 men of Israel who are marked.
Yes,
for salvation.
We have 144,000 Jewish men who are marked and sealed physically and spiritually, who survive and roll into the 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ, where we do see the full land covenant of Genesis 15 fulfilled. And what you're talking about is these different dispensations. God's character nature doesn't change, but how he chooses to work and what he works through. And now the instrument is the church. During that tribulation period, God is going to be working mightily through Gentiles, but he's going to be working super mightily through Jews, the Jewish evangelists you mentioned, who actually have probably some kind of physical mark and it's a physical and spiritual sealing, and they become great evangelists. And the Bible talks about the number of people becoming saved is so many, one can hardly number them. But now it's gone from being the church, who's been removed, and to the really Jewish evangelist is God's becoming a mighty instrument, right? So these are dispensations, and it helps us understand the house rules. This dispensation is house rules, and we keep using those same house rules to study and interpret. Well, here's Tucker Carlson interviewing this guy this week, trashing dispensationalism. And I'm like, why? Okay, you're a political guy. You're not a theologian. And it was pretty obvious to me watching the interview today for the first time when the guy's talking and the camera goes to Tucker. Tucker's like, oh, yeah. But I'm like, that's the face and reaction of a guy who has no idea what's being said. Woo! It's just a guy that can help to destroy, I think, what he sees as an opposition spiritually and politically, which is evangelical Zionist Christians and dispensationalists coming around Israel and our Jewish friends, which is, includes you as a former Muslim, my friend Shahram Hadian as a former Muslim, my friend Annie from Iran, Shahram's from Iran, my friend Usama Dakdok from Egypt, who was never a Muslim, but his daddy planted churches throughout Egypt, and the Muslim Brotherhood destroyed them all. I mean, we got Christians, we got Jews, we got former Muslims, we got Egyptians, and we're all in the same boat. And yet Tucker Carlson and these guys are attacking all of us from our different backgrounds, quite diverse. But we have what we all share in common is our interpretation of the scripture, which these guys are now railing on. And people on Twitter today are calling it immoral. They're calling it a false gospel. They're calling it evil. This is what they're saying about
ours or his.
Ours.
Well, which one are they calling?
They're calling us dispensationalist, evil, immoral, false gospel.
And you know, Pastor Jack Hibbs did a presentation about this, didn't call out Candace by name, but he's like, you know what? I'm not going to argue with you about domestic policy. I'm not going to argue with you about BLM, but about religion, theology, please get out of the space. You are out of your depth. This is not your lane. Stay in your lane. But we also know before the coming of the Antichrist, there's a great falling away. And we saw COVID fracture the church. You know, a bunch of people just left. You know, they just left. You know, the church closed and people left Christianity. And so I think this is another fracturing of the church where there's this great falling away from people who just don't want to support Israel. And we know that from Ezekiel 38 too, right? That there's nobody that will come to their defense. And it's just that we see how this rise of anti-Semitism as it happens century after century after century, and yet God upholds his people. I mean, they are proof of God's miraculous protection, because they should have been extinguished by now, except for God's grace and God's mercy on them. And so if we want to believe all the promises that God has told us, then we should believe in the promises he told them. Amen. So that God's nature is unchanging, and that we could have the same assurance of our salvation and of our that Christ died for our sins, as they will be redeemed by God in the last days. So we, unfortunately, there's all of this. They have such large platforms. And again, as I mentioned, they're both Catholics. I think it is connected to some of the old Catholic doctrine and the, Jews killed Jesus mentality. This is kind of a modern version of that originally gave rise to anti-Semitism in the church. And so I think they're just kind of speaking a version of that. And unfortunately, it's going to taint a lot of people who don't know better. And that's unfortunate.
Very, very well said, Hadia. I said today on radio, I said, we've had the people on the left come after us for years, but now I'm increasingly seeing the people on the right. And I said, I was talking to my friend, Dr. Andy Woods, and then my Israeli reporter, Aaron. I said, pretty soon we're going to find ourselves surrounded by people on the left and the right. There's a small group of us, and pretty soon we're going to be surrounded by the left and the right attacking us. Yes. But what's really ironic is some of those people on the left are Jews, and they're going to find, you know what, that guy that I never liked his politics and really didn't care for his Jesus talk, that Brannon Howse, I've got to get over to Tennessee, because if there was a guy that would protect me, it would be him and his people. I got to get to his house. And I said, some of you liberal Jews, you're going to find out Brannon Howse and his followers are who you're going to come to for help, and we're going to give it to you because we know what God has said. So I find it fascinating that some of them, even on the left, are starting they're starting to realize, hey, that Brannon Howse guy, he maybe isn't what I thought he was. Do I agree with him politically? No. Do I agree with him on his Christian worldview? No. But he's standing up for us Jews, and these are liberal leftist Jews. So I think it's going to get very interesting very fast. Well, one last clip. Candace is now out attacking President Trump. Listen to this, guys. Here we go.
You've got the Human Health Secretary, RFK Jr., saying, oh, we have to declare this an epidemic. And what we're really talking about is people voicing opinions against Israel's policies on blowing up Palestinian kids. You can accept that or you cannot accept that. It is just the reality. And if you don't understand how close we are inching to them destroying free speech, and once speech goes, everything else goes, then you need to start paying attention. They are redefining anti-Semitism to even be parts of the Bible. They are saying that it is anti-Semitism, and the Trump administration is pushing this on college campuses, to even suggest that a Jewish person might be more loyal to Israel than they are to America. That's totally plausible. It's totally plausible that a black person in America might be more loyal to Uganda than they are to America. Look at that. That is like, why are we redefining this? Portions of the Bible I mean, it's getting crazy. So I want to show you this Senate hearing. So they had another Senate hearing, like the one that I showed up on, except this one, it was on anti-Semitism on college campuses. And I want you to listen to what this rabbi got up and said as he called for hate speech laws. Okay, this is Rabbi Levi Shemtov. He is the executive vice president of American Friends of Lubavitch. This is like a Lubavitcher who I spoke about. And RFK Jr. came and said, don't speak about Lubavitch. And I said, this is actually a very radical form of Judaism. Here is what he said. Listen to him standing up, Rabbi Levi Shemtov. Here's what he wants for America.
Anti-Semitism is not just an age-old prejudice. It is a contemporary crisis manifesting on campuses across the nation. It is not enough for individuals or institutions to merely claim they are not anti-Semitic. As my father once taught me, it is not enough for people, especially public figures, to be neutral or not be anti-Semitic. One must be anti-Semitic.
That is the exact same rhetoric, okay, as Ibram X. Kendi during the peak of BLM saying it's not enough to be racist, you have to actively be anti-racist. It's exact same rhetoric, okay? There's no way to slice it. So what is happening right now that we, meaning the people who voted for and have supported Trump for years and got him into office because we actually were standing up to him when BLM was going crazy and calling everybody white supremacists, and people, while Trump was in office, there were George Floyd riots, people that stood up for him and said this is wrong, are now watching his administration execute the exact same thing, but this time it's for anti-Semitism. And it's not even for anti-Semitism, really. It's because this is not helpful to Jews in America. It's for Israel. Like, it feels like Netanyahu is running the White House and Trump's just signing and doing whatever they say, right? It feels like Netanyahu should be sitting in the Oval Office as they demand hate speech laws and they get what they want. Every day they're announcing something that they're going to do to further support Israel. And that something is now looking to me like a detriment to American freedom. And if you can't see that, okay, it is time for you to take off the rose-colored glasses. Because just because Trump was against all of this in 2016 does not mean that he does not have people that are around him who are for this.
Okay, so now Benjamin Netanyahu
So much
is the one.
to unpack.
Say that again?
There's so much to unpack there.
Well, there is. And Trump is now being controlled by Netanyahu. He's pulling the purse strings. He's running the Oval Office, which I said on radio today. If that's the case, why did Benjamin Netanyahu just put tariffs on his country from the U.S.? Because that's what President Trump just did. He just put tariffs on Israel. So if he's in charge, why didn't Benjamin Netanyahu stop that? Because he's not in charge. He's running his country. President Trump's running his. Now, when it comes to hate speech laws, just because one rabbi makes a statement about it's not going to have to be, against anti-Semitism, you need to be anti-Semitism. Okay. I don't know if he was testifying about hate speech laws or not, because she didn't play the full clip. Who knows?
Yeah.
I am not a big fan of hate speech laws because I think the laws as they are written can take care of people being accosted, slander, liable, stalked, that kind of thing. I have in my book, The Coming Religious Reich, where then Tony Blair in Europe is pushing for laws to prosecute and criminalize those who deny the Holocaust. And some rabbis came along and said, hey, as much as we hate Holocaust deniers, we don't want laws that will prosecute that because that limits free speech. And as soon as that's passed, they're going to come after our free speech. So I can show you rabbis who would say, I don't want to do that. So just because she can show you maybe a rabbi that does, I can show you, quote, rabbis and Jews that are anti-Semites that hate Israel. I mean, it's hard to explain, but they're marching out there for Hamas. Okay. So don't just pick a guy and say, well, no, we're going to paint the whole Jewish community with this, number one. But number two, she will not get off this topic.
No, I don't even know where to start. So first of all, this idea where she says, We can't accuse them of being loyal to a state other than America. That should be our free speech. What she's basically, and what the Jewish community, based on the history that they've suffered, remember, based on the Inquisition and then with Nazi Germany and all of these threads that have happened to Jewish communities throughout the world, the accusation of sedition and treason against the state are very serious accusations, basically saying that they are a state within a state, that they don't pledge loyalty to the United States. These are very serious accusations. So if the hearing was about preventing that, or concerned about people saying that, that's a very serious thing, and I think we should be paying attention to those kind of accusations, because labeling an entire community as seditious or treasonous is dangerous and is wrong. But she also goes into this whole diatribe with Netanyahu. Clearly, nobody controls Trump. I mean, let's be real. Nobody tells him what to do. It doesn't matter whether it's Elon Musk or Netanyahu or you name it, who. I mean, even look at how he came out against DeSantis when he was running in the campaign. I mean, you thought those two were pretty close, and then he just came out firing against him. I don't know, he had acrimonious or something. He had funny names for him. But anyways, I think that was a low blow, unnecessary. And the fact that she doesn't think we should be defending Jewish kids on campus. Again, I'm just so disappointed in her that she hasn't watched these, hours of footage about what was happening to the Jewish kids on campus and thought that that's worthy for us to pay attention to. It's so surprising to me. And again, I think it's clickbait at this point. She's come out. If you read her comment section, there are a ton of Muslims now who support her. So if that was her goal, to get a whole new audience, she's been very successful at it. But at what cost? I think she's sacrificed a lot of important values to be sensational on social media.
Wow. Well, folks, now you know why Hadia is going to be our keynote speaker for our banquet Thursday night, October 2nd, here in the Mid-South. The tickets went on sale tonight. We have added no profit in those tickets. Those are simply the cost of the evening for the ballroom and the meal, which is amazing. It's one of Melissa and I's favorite restaurants. They have the best steak, the best chicken, which they marinate, the best baked potatoes, salad. It is one of our favorite restaurants, and we are food snobs, Melissa and I, because Melissa's a fabulous cook. You guys all know that. You've seen her cooking show that she does for us for this network. So I don't have to go to restaurants, because my wife every day says, or every evening, a lot of times at night, she'll say, what would you like for dinner tomorrow night? So she can plan her menu. I can have whatever I want. It's like being the president, and I have a chef. All I have to do is pick up the phone and call and say, hey, hon, I'd like to have, and it's there. And if I don't tell her what I want, she gets upset. She's like, it's so much easier if you just tell me what it is you want. So yes, I get wine chicken, I get chicken stacky uppy, I get her famous chicken and rice, I get the sweet and sour with pineapple. I can order up tons, all right? So I'm a food snob because I have a great wife or a cook. And Melissa and I's favorite restaurant is where we're holding this year's banquet. We didn't even know they had a ballroom. Didn't even know they have a ballroom, Hadia. Last week we were there having dinner, and I said, our audience would love this food. It is not banquet rubber chicken food. This is one of our favorite restaurants because the food's so good. I said, what if they have a banquet hall? I'd see these little meeting rooms off to the side, but they're just really small. So I said, I got nothing to lose to go look. So at the end of my meal, I got up, I walked down the hall, saw this long hall. I took a right down this formal hallway, and there's these two big doors at the end. And I said, there might be a ballroom in there. And I opened them up, and sure enough, big, beautiful ballroom. So I asked to see the manager, and they put me in touch with the owner's daughter. And we have secured that banquet hall, and you guys are going to get an amazing meal. The seating is limited that Thursday night, and Hadia is our keynote speaker, and the tickets, it's now on the website. They're telling me in the control room. Caleb got it up there. Worldviewstore.com, Thursday night's banquet. Tickets are now available, and Hadia will be our keynote speaker. So, Hadia, awesome. I know we're going to be visiting with you a lot between now and then, but I also want to promote your website, resurrectministry.com, resurrectministry.com. And as you go on there, you'll also find out about her. I think we've got Jack Hibbs on here. I think he pops up in one of the pictures. If I keep going. There he is. There he is. So there you go. In fact, I think you're doing something with him live on November 30th, it looked like. So there you go. So check it out, resurrectministry.com, resurrectministry.com. So great to have you with us, Hadia. I know we're going to have you back, but thanks for making time for us today.
My pleasure. Really looking forward to the banquet. I happen to be a big foodie myself, and so is my husband. So we're super excited.
Well, good. And I look forward to meeting your husband. You guys are going to love this. This is a restaurant in the South here where they cook the steaks and everything right there on a big, huge charcoal grill in the middle of the restaurant. And the food is just, it's so fresh. The salads are fresh. Everything is just great. So it's going to be a fun night for food, but also great fellowship and a great keynote address.
And I look forward to meeting your audience too.
Yeah, and the whole crew in the control room, all of them are eager to meet you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hadia checking in tonight. Visit our website, resurrectministry.com, resurrectministry.com. All right, folks, don't forget, we are going to Milwaukee. Milwaukee's coming up April 15th. That is a free event. It's our Worldview Radio Understanding the Times rally. And I think we have a graphic for it. There it is right there. It is free. It's going to be myself, Dr. Andy Woods. Aaron Lavarco will be live in the building from Israel. It's free, but you must register. worldviewtube.com/events. worldviewtube.com/events. Very important that you do that so you have a seat. Otherwise, if you don't have internet, well, of course you have internet. How are you watching now? worldviewtube.com/events. For radio, sometimes they give out a number because those people listening to radio don't have internet. But if you're watching this show, you clearly have internet. worldviewtube.com/events. worldviewtube.com/events. It's free, but you must register so we can put out enough seats. All right. Also, don't forget about our worldviewwater.net. worldviewwater.net. I have this right here under my kitchen sink to take out all the toxins. It also adds magnesium and oxygen, which are great for my cells. And it takes out harmful toxins, lead, fluoride, cyanide, arsenic. Yeah, you don't want to drink any of that. Pesticides, pharmaceuticals. I also have one for the shower. That's this one right there, the far right, as well. So again, check it all out. This is the water I give Dolly as well. Worldviewwater.net. Worldviewwater.net. We talked last night about the fact that, we might end up with a big old trade war with China, and they provide a lot of our pharmaceuticals. We're also getting word that pharmacies are not filling a lot of prescriptions, particularly when it comes to antibiotics. You don't want to be caught without antibiotics. This is not a joke. Worldviewhealthcare.com. That's the new URL. Worldviewhealthcare.com. You also find it on the sponsors page, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Otherwise, worldviewhealthcare.com. Get your medical kits here, folks. Get your medical kits and have them stocked away for when you need them. Like last fall when I had pneumonia, I didn't have to go to urgent care and get an antibiotic. We just were able to go down the hall and open the closet and pull the medical kit out and take it. Okay? If there, God forbid, is a disruption in inventory, just-in-time supplies, trade war with China, China goes after Taiwan, we get involved, they stop shipping our prescription drugs to us, you want to go ahead and get some of this in advance. And also check out their healthcare plans that get you free prescriptions, or the Elite, which gets you free prescriptions and free supplements. So check all that out as well. Look at all these things available here at worldviewtube.com/sponsors. One of them, of course, is the wellness company, worldviewhealthcare.com. Joining me now is former Congressman Steve King of Iowa. Congressman, thanks for being with us tonight.
We're glad to be. Thanks for having me on, Brannon.
Tell our audience a little bit about you. I think a lot of our audience knows who you are because you had a very long career in the U.S. House. But for those who maybe don't know, because this is really your first time on my show, you're on with Tamara Scott all the time. But this here on our network, noon Central each day. But your first time here. So tell our audience a little bit about Steve King.
Well, at first, Tamara's a terrific friend. But my background is I grew up in a law enforcement family. And my father steeped me in the Constitution, the rule of law, and, of course, the Bible. And so I went out into the world, and I could see that we had accumulated a negative net worth of $5,000. Marilyn and I, my high school sweetheart, now of 53 years. And I knew we had to do something, so I convinced a Democrat banker to loan me 100% against an old beaten up bulldozer that was weeds were growing around it out in Nebraska. I'm Iowa, by the way. And so I drug it in and welded on it for 2 weeks and rolled it out. Now I've got a business. And 3 hours later, 10 o'clock in the morning, the engine blew up. And about 7 or 8 days later, Marilyn's out there on the tracks, now pregnant with would be our first son, about 3.5 or 4 months pregnant, with a 7-foot cheater pipe torquing the head bolts on that old D7. So from there on, we built a construction company. And then I went to the Iowa Senate in 1996. I would go down and talk to those legislators, and sometimes it just didn't just register. And so I thought, I need to go find somebody that will represent me in the Senate. And I set about recruiting somebody, but they all pointed their fingers back at me and became my kitchen cabinet. So I unseated a 24-year Republican incumbent state senator in a primary with a 2-to-1 margin. And then 6 years in the Iowa Senate, where I pushed English as the official language and the social agenda, the fiscal conservative agenda. And there was a seat that opened up in Congress for the 2002 election after the 2002 election after the redistricting in 2000. And in that 4-way primary, I'm the guy that didn't have the money, but I went everywhere all the time. And we came out of that primary having won the race for Congress. So just as a construction guy, went off to Congress and found myself on the Judiciary Committee and on the Small Business Committee, which is fairly natural, and on the Ag Committee. And I love the Judiciary Committee. It's the most polarized committee on the Hill. It's based on constitutional law and the statutes that come through. It's where the social agenda gets fought out and where, of course, crime and punishment gets fought out. So I went through that for 18 years, and in the process of doing so, I emerged as one of the lead voices on a number of things. Maybe I'll say the lead voice on building a wall on the southern border. I was so frustrated with then Paul Ryan standing up on a regular basis and saying, well, I come from a construction family, he would say, but you can't build a wall down there. It's too hard. It's hot. It's desert. It's got mountains. It's got rocks. It's got a river. And the toad has to hop across the border, and the long-nosed bat has to fly his route or whatever. And I thought, this is nuts. So went to the lumber yard and got some tongue and groove boards and cut them in the right lengths, painted them gray, built a little foundation. I went to the floor of Congress, and I showed him how easy it is to build a wall on the southern border. I set a model up, and that seemed to stick pretty well. Of course, they attacked me right away. And also, I pushed English as the official language. Very grateful that Trump has put that in place by executive order, and I hope it follows by law. You'll probably know me also, a lot of your viewers, I think, Brannon, because I'm the original author of the Heartbeat Bill at the national level. And I want to say that Janet Porter out of Ohio is a driving force on this. Phyllis Schlafly it was her funeral where I heard that calling to step forward and push it. Took it into Washington, really carefully drafted the bill, crafted and drafted the bill, and then worked it hard in the House, got to 174 co-sponsors on that legislation. And we had all the support we needed to do a markup in the Judiciary Committee, roll it to the floor. We had the votes to pass it on the floor by my count, and that was without exceptions for rape and incest. Because those babies don't deserve to be executed because of, I'll say, the circumstances of their conception. And Kevin McCarthy killed that bill in the last 2 weeks of that session in 2020, I suppose it was. Maybe it was 2018. It was 2020. And but in the meantime, I'd gone out to multiple states and pushed the Heartbeat Bill along with others. We passed it through in Iowa, Texas. There's something like 16 states that have some version of the Heartbeat Bill now. So I count that as saving lives every day. God's children every day have an opportunity to breathe, to live, to laugh, to learn, and have children of their own. So I would say that's the I call that as an accomplishment. And of course, when Roe versus Wade was reversed, and that was June 24th, I believe, that should be a national holiday. Had I been in Congress, I would have introduced that legislation to do so. Probably lost, but I would have put the marker down. And then the they decided that I was a little bit too vocal, a little bit too independent, and they couldn't buy me, and they couldn't influence me, and they couldn't intimidate me. And so it was a nationwide sting set up to push me out of office. And we can talk about that or not. I'm fairly comfortable. But you see over my shoulder, the book is Walking Through the Fire, my fight for the heart and soul of America. And that's what I always fought for American exceptionalism, for the underlying principles that built this country, for the Constitution. And I've always believed that if you bring this back to those pillars of American exceptionalism, most of which are within the Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, religion, press, keep and bear arms, you can go on right on out to the 10th Amendment. You only really have to add the rule of law and free enterprise capitalism, and you've got the foundation for this great America, which is the flagship for the fleet of Western civilization. And it's under assault, it's under attack all over the world, but targeting all of our values. And if we lose this, and boy, that looks to me like President Trump has pulled us out of the pit on this. But if we were to lose, if the civilization would collapse, then that's the flagship of Western civilization, the United States of America. If we sunk, the entire fleet is sunk, and they would scrub out they would scrub out Christianity, they scrub out Western civilization itself. We have been the target for a long time. And I've been saying that for a long time, but now I see that we've got President Trump will utter those words, Elon Musk will utter those words, many of the cabinet members will also. I could just feel the current of our society rejecting those anti-values that have been taking us apart for so many years.
100%.
So that's how I see about it, Brannon.
And your resume, I mean, the things from English as the official language, building the border wall, the heartbeat bills. I mean, what an amazing career for the things you stood for. We don't have to go into great detail because I have a bunch of things I want to talk to you about as such a seasoned member of the U.S. House of Representatives. But I do want to ask you about this. It sounds like, so here you are taking on Paul Ryan, the Uniparty. You know, most of those people we know are never Trumpers, you know. And so it sounds like the Uniparty was trying to control you, co-opt you, your book, Walking Through the Fire. You're not willing to be controlled. I'm going to be Steve King. My constituents know who I am, what I stand for. They elected me to carry out this worldview. So how did they, since they couldn't influence you and they couldn't buy you and couldn't control you, they sought to malign you, mischaracterize you, and attack you? What did they do?
Well, it would be, I guess I'll say it became more clear to me in 2018 when, I won't go through the whole long story, but I will just say that there was a negative story written in Esquire magazine that just had no basis to start with. And then that got dropped in. And then within about a month, I was being called anti-Semitic. And it kind of fits in with the dialogue prior, but I've got a 100% voting record with Israel. I've sat in Bibi's office, his private office, at least twice, and had a number of good conversations with him. I believe that the Jews are just simply our older brothers and sisters, and we are all God's children tied together, and we have to make sure that Israel survives. But I got called anti-Semitic because I criticized George Soros, and I didn't pay any attention.
Wait a minute, I criticize George Soros all the time. So you're called anti-Semitic for criticizing George Soros, who on 60 Minutes says that he was given over to his handler by his father because his father was trying to protect him during that horrific time in Germany, I guess, right? Was it Germany or whatever country he was in?
Austria, I believe.
Okay, and he, well, I can even pull up the clip here in a second.
He was Hungarian, but I think it happened in Austria.
Okay, Austria. And he says, George Soros says he was not sorry he went around collecting the property of the Jews. So here's a Jewish guy going around with a non-Jewish guy, his handler, if you will, collecting the property of Jews at 14. Well, at 14, I would have had enough of a conscience to know this isn't right. And he says he did not regret it, feels no guilt. Now, if someone disagrees with George Soros or Karl Marx or Sigmund Freud, that doesn't make you anti-Semitic disagreeing with their worldview. You didn't attack his heritage or his. I don't even know if the man practices Judaism. I mean, but this was, I mean, talk about Talk about a thin, a really massively made up manufactured narrative, but it actually flew. It actually worked.
It was a significant part of the narrative that they loaded on me. And I know it was loaded up in my political opponent out of what he said before he should have even had any thoughts about it. That wasn't the whole thing they threw at me, though. They threw all kinds of things at me: racist, bigot, homophobe, white nationalist, white supremacist. All of those things were being hurled at me. And on top, and then we got to the 2018 general election in November. By the week before that election, Steve Stivers, who was the chairman of the NRCC, whose job it is to elect and re-elect Republicans, turned against me, attacked me, and his communications director did the same thing 3.5 hours later. I was running against all the Democrats and all the Republicans and all the media, and they had also shut down my funding stream. So I didn't have a lot of money, but we won that election with a 3.2% victory. Every other Republican in the Iowa congressional delegation in the House all lost. I was the only standing person. And the next week, the governor of Iowa stood up in a press conference and said, Representative King needs to decide what he wants to do, whether it's to represent the people and the values of the 4th District or do something else. We knew that was open season on me, and it was. And so then after they poured everything over my head in that election, the week before Thanksgiving, Jeff Rowe wanted to have a conference meeting with me and a number of my staff. And so we went ahead with that, and he told me they're going to try again. They will pick a time when there's a low news cycle, and they will trigger an all-out media barrage on me because they believe they could force me to resign. And I'm sitting there thinking, I just won an election. And what would they have on me to try to force me to resign for? I felt pretty clean. Apparently I was, because they didn't find anything. But by January, there was a story written in the New York Times that quoted me as saying, let's see, white nationalism, white supremacy, and Western civilization. How did that language become offensive? But in that interview, which there's no tape for and no notes accessible, in that interview, I repeated what I had repeated other times in other media outlets, which is, I understand racism, bigot, homophobe, white nationalist, white supremacist, all as names to put on people. But Western civilization, you're attacking me for defending Western civilization. How did that language become offensive? Why did I sit in classrooms learning about the merits of Western civilization, now to be lambasted for defending it? And that was my statement into the New York Times, but that's not what they printed. And they knew that article was going to be the trigger, because the author that wrote that, Trip Gabriel, said, and we had him on tape saying, that he didn't think that line was going to be the one that did it. He knew he was writing a story they were going to use against me, but he was even surprised at which line they actually used when they did it. And after that, there was nothing I could say or do. I was the worst person in the world for, it seems like 2 years. I just remember opening up my Google page and finding the first day after all those months that my face wasn't on that page. And I thought, maybe I weathered the storm. But the Lord walked with me the whole time. Wow. We all know that.
And there was no recording. So you're saying, hey, I didn't say that. They've got you misquoted, and yet that's what they use, a misquote, to try to destroy you and make you into something that you're not. Well, I guess you then, certainly during his first term and then his 4 years out of office, now back in office, you must sympathize a little bit with President Trump, because they've tried to do the same thing to him. I don't think that would work on you today.
I think you're right, Brannon. That's an astute observation. I was probably the first one that they ran that gambit on. And President Trump, I'll say for me, the title of my book is Walking Through the Fire. He did more than walk through the fire. He walked through the inferno. But I can tell you, it tempers the steel within your spine when you go through these things. And his is very well tempered. And I think that he's a far better president right now in these first 3 months of his presidency than he would have been if he'd have been successful in being inaugurated in 2000 in the election after 2020, 2021, because he came in with these ideas that there was a bipartisanship and patriotism and free enterprise capitalism and that kind of thing. But he learned that there's not bipartisanism that's working if you're trying to take a president down. And when they unloaded all of the tools of government against Trump, every branch of government, every cabinet seat that I can think of, sitting around the Biden cabinet, lined up to use whatever tools they could use to attack him, and they didn't. They weren't constitutional. They weren't lawful. They just simply they decided to impeach him. I believe they decided to impeach him in the first term, the weekend after he was elected in 2016, and I've got some significant reason to believe that. But he stood through it all, went back and fought them all. And he decided all the way along the way, here's what I need to do to put America back on the rails again. Part of that might be getting a little bit of even, and that's okay with me, because wherever I can see he might be getting even, he's also fixing America and replacing us back down to the framework we need to build the country on.
Well, let's talk about that, getting things maybe squared up and even. I did check. It was hungry for George Soros. Yeah, so that's where that was going on. Well, let's talk about that. The markets today are down, what, 2,231 points or something, and the left is making big hay out of that. I saw a video early this morning in my show prep, and apparently after I got done watching it, President Trump, I'm told, retweeted it or put it out on Truth Social. So apparently he must agree with it. That's what my staff's telling me, is that he put this video out himself, part of it. Here's the video itself.
Trump is crashing the stock market by 20% this month, but he's doing it on purpose. And this is why Warren Buffett just said Trump is making the best economic moves he's seen in over 50 years. Now, here's the secret game he's playing, and it could make you rich. So why is he doing this? To push cash into treasuries, which forces the Fed to slash interest rates in May, and those lower rates give the Fed the ability to refinance trillions of debt very inexpensively. It also weakens the dollar and drops mortgage rates. Now, it's a wild chess move, but it's working. Now, you're probably wondering, what about his tariffs? Well, I'll tell you, it's a genius play. It actually forces companies to build here to dodge them. It also forces farmers to sell more of their products here in the U.S. to bring grocery prices way down. We've already seen this with eggs. Now, remember, 94% of all stocks are owned only by 8% of Americans. So Trump, he's taking from the rich short term and handing it to the middle class through lower prices.
All right. So what do you make of this, Congressman?
That's terrific. It's broad. It hits a lot of pieces. I watched the first third of it or so, and I'm thinking, yeah, let's just keep buying on the way down. When it stops going down, maybe stop buying. But I think, too, that the markets need to take an adjustment. I think the tariff, I haven't taken it apart and looked at it piece by piece, and I hear the complaints that are going on. But when you look at the disparity that exists between the tariffs, and we put a lot of money into Europe with the imbalance that was there. We've done it a lot of places, and a tremendous imbalance with regard to China as well. So I'll say bring it. The tariffs on Mexico and on Canada have something to do with illegal immigration. And I will still say more so Mexico than it is in Canada. Logistically, it's a much more pressure on us. That helps him get agreements in the countries in South America, too. And we didn't have a country like Venezuela that was taking back their illegal aliens. There were a number of them that would not do that. And so we turn them loose in the streets of America. But when that plane went on, up in the air and had 238 gang members on it being deported they were Venezuelan, being deported down to El Salvador in the CICOT prison there that was put together by President Bukele. And the judge said, you got to return them, turn that plane around. And President Bukele said, well, too late. As far as whoopsie, too late. That's something that comes out from tariffs. And then now it looks like Venezuela is taking their illegals back. That has to do with the tariffs that he's using. He's playing multidimensional chess, and he can be in it for the long term. He's got no consequence at the end of his presidency, as this looks to be, maybe not to him, it looks to me like it's the last term. So I like the chess game that he's playing. It's global, and we are the economy of the world. And whatever we do impacts across the entire world. Another thing that's happening is that this restoration of our core values, getting rid of all the wokeness that's out there and translating that through our military, our schools, along the way, that's also echoing around the world. The global culture, at least with Western civilization, is led by the United States of America. And he's leading us out of that swamp that we've been in. and setting up good standards underneath. We have to tighten our belts, yes, and it's going to hurt for a while. We can have a really sound America the other side of it, Brannon.
And he needs to refinance, about $7 trillion in debt here at some point this year. Is that right?
I don't know that number, but it's not at all surprising. We just keep rolling this thing. $7 trillion in debt to refinance. And the interest rates were lower than they are now. And so I think the overall push of this is putting more money into bonds. That's the safest place to go with that. And that the argument on the cash seems to make sense to me, although I had not given it any thought before I saw that clip, at least in the contemporary.
So it sounds like what President Trump is trying to do is force the Fed to lower interest rates. Is that right? You think that's what he's trying to do?
Force the Fed to lower the interest rates and also make more cash available. And so that will push the interest rates down too. Our national debt, I think it's worth saying that last time I checked, about half our national debt was held by Americans. And then then we also, of course, we've got a lot of national debt that's spread around the world, the Chinese and the Saudis and the UAE and on. The countries that have a surplus and a sovereign wealth fund put their money into U.S. bonds. And so, but with half of the Americans holding half that debt, that tells you, and if we were to default, that would just be a global economic collapse. So we just can't let that happen. But we need to get our solid money underneath us, and Musk sees that. I'm actually I shouldn't even act surprised. Yeah, I am very impressed with the depth and the breadth of the approach that Elon Musk brings to this. He came into it because he could see that America couldn't sustain itself if we kept on the trajectory we were on. And when he bought Twitter and turned it into X, that took care of the censoring that was going on throughout cyberspace and print media and on. And we've seen horrible examples of what the Biden administration commanding that different people and different messages be censored and shut down. And he opened that up, and he's got it right when it is that, I'll just say this way, what good young people need to do, the best thing they can do for their country is have a lot of babies and raise them right. That's what makes the country and the world a better place, is when you multiply that into the next generations. He's got that figured out, I believe, although I wouldn't approach it the same way as he does. And then with the technology, instant real-time communications, AI should make all of us nervous, but it's coming. And so who's going to manage that, and how do we sort through? It's another big question. But the fundamental principles that our founding fathers put in place and that the framers put in place are still the foundation that makes America an even greater nation and leads the world.
And I'm getting, I was looking it up here to see it's somewhere around $7 trillion to $9 trillion, depending on the report I'm reading, of debt that needs to be refinanced. So if he can push that down, that's going to save us money, because I read right now, if the report's accurate, $1.3 trillion is what we're spending each year in interest on this national debt. 1.3 trillion. And I played some clips last night on my show, basically about the debt loop we're in. There was a guy that's written a book talking about the big print, and he's saying the government's really going to have, apparently, to make a choice here. And one of the choices they may make is just to print the money, which of course is going to see massive inflation. And I think we're going to see gold go much higher. I mean, Congressman, you've been around long enough. Did you ever think you'd see $3,100 gold? And it's gone up like $500 an ounce just in the last few months, right? And people are looking for hard assets to get into. They kind of see what's coming. But you've got us adding to that national debt. I read the other day, $11 trillion. $11 trillion in new debt just in the last 5 to 6 years. I mean, we can't sustain this.
When I went into Congress, if my recollection is correct, our national debt was around $7 trillion, and now it's what, 36 trillion, someplace in there. And this is a narrative worth telling. I swore in January of 2003, and we were already at war in Afghanistan. And when the budget came out of the Budget Committee, chaired by Jim Nussle, a fellow Ireland, whom I've counted as a friend for a long time, there I am, freshman. And we'd had balanced budgets since about 1998. They were balanced under Bill Clinton, partly out of spite, and they got more money coming in than they expected. So then they kept producing balanced budgets, probably 98, 99, 2000, 2001, 2002. But 2000, and I guess it would be the 2003 fiscal year also. Then for the 2004, which I arrived for, there's no balanced budget and there's a great big deficit spending. And so it was a little hard for me to write a balanced budget then as a freshman. I didn't have the network to do that. But I went to Chairman Nussle and I said, where's our balanced budget, Jim? And he said, we can't balance the budget. And I said, why not? We've always balanced the budget the last few years. And he said, well, we're at war in Afghanistan. We're preparing to go into war in Iraq. We've got all these things to harden to protect us from terrorism, our food supply, our power supply, and all. That's going to take a lot of money. We can't balance the budget. And I said, Jim, we can ask the American people to tighten their belt. We must do that and keep this budget balanced even through this time. Because if we don't, and I use the exact words, we will have the devil's own time ever balancing it again, close quote. And here we are, these 24 or so years later, 20-some years later, and we haven't seen a balanced budget since. We've been living off of continuing resolutions. They have been avoiding the debates that need to happen. And then I pushed to get balanced budgets to the floor for a vote. It took me nearly 10 years to get the barrier out of the way so we could bring a balanced budget to the floor. And that balanced budget was such a disappointment. It was, well, okay, we're going to balance the budget in 10 years. This is the way we calculate this. And then next year, well, just each year, we're going to just drop a year off of it. Well, anyway, by the time we get to 10 years, it's going to be balanced. But of course, you know how that goes. We'll just push it ahead another year. In 10 years, we'll balance the budget. And 20 years later, nothing was balanced. And I don't even hear the discussion anymore among the members of Congress about getting to balance until now. They just simply ignore it and more or less hit the green button and go. I wrote a number of balanced budgets, by the way. And I tell you one that Paul Ryan was a budget chair through part of that time, and he called some of us up to his office to sell us on his budget. And he's going through that, and he had these graphs on how we were going to get to budget. His budget was going to balance in 25 years. And I looked at that graph, and I said, look at that loop on there. The spending goes up, then it comes around, then it comes back down again. That looks to me like you're waiting for the baby boomers to die before you balance the budget. And he looked at me, and he said, well, yeah, it has to be that way, but you didn't have to say that. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on with, and people that even with the demographics, they would say, well, we need, Paul Ryan included, we need to have these immigrants come into America because they're the ones that are going to be working and having babies, and they'll pay for the retirement of the baby boomers and beyond. And I would say, and I had this in hearings under oath, a demographic expert out of Stanford made a similar statement, and I said, well, then if you're going to bring in a lot of immigrants to pay for the retirements of the baby boomers, why not tell me who's going to pay for their retirement, those people you're bringing in? And he just said, that's for another generation to worry about. That's not good enough for people that are leading the free world.
No, it's sure not. And now let's talk about the border. President Trump is, doing what he can do to get all these folks out of here. But in the meantime, we've had the battlefield has been prepared. A lot of guys that were in the military, but some of them now have gotten out of the military. But they've been telling me, some of the guys in the intelligence community that are friends of mine that come on the broadcast, again, formerly at the time they were in their job, now they've retired, we're saying, look, Brannon, we were nervous under the Obama administration. We had 8 years of the battlefield being prepared. We don't have a clue who's here. Then it was just the floodgates were opened under Biden. We know we've got terror cells here. We now have Israel and America talking about dealing with Iran. And I've got Islamic experts, including one that was on here last night, Dave Gobbets, who wrote the book Muslim Mafia with Paul Sperry, saying, if we go after Iran with Israel, the American people just need to know. They have plenty between Hamas and, of course, their own terror cells of Hezbollah. They've got plenty of terror cells here in the U.S. He says they've got thousands of them here already in the U.S. I don't think we should be blackmailed by that, but I think the American people ought to know this. And I think they also ought to understand what it is these people can do to our critical infrastructure. Do you think that we as a people have not become a nation of preppers? I remember the former head of FEMA during I think President Trump's first term saying we need a nation of preparedness. We need to become a nation of preppers. Because he said, I'm tired of going to one crisis after another and seeing people that don't even have the basics that they didn't prepare. They didn't even prepare with basics, and now the government can't efficiently and quickly get to their basic human needs. If they just had done a moderate amount of preparation, What are your thoughts on the terrorist cells in the U.S., the borders down, the battlefield being prepared, the critical infrastructure that is now at risk by these terrorist cells? Should we decide we need to do something in the interest of Israel, in the interest of America with Iran, or other countries for that matter? And then the lack of Americans that are ready and prepared on their own, because the government can't come and save everybody, nor should it be their job.
Boy, if you go, let's just see. First, I do believe that there are thousands and thousands of fifth column people in here from multiple countries. The Chinese, we've seen the videos of them, the reports of 10,000 here, another 10,000 there coming through the Darien Gap. I've seen the videos of the Chinese advertising to send their 20 to 25-year-old men into the United States through that route and go to Colombia and take a boat across the water and park it there on the peninsula, and then walk up through the Darien Gap and get to the United States. They were advertising that. They're showing whole boatloads of young Chinese men that are jollily smiling along their way while they're happily going into America. How many of them are trained to be special forces, and how many of them have been trained to hate America? Most of them, I think. That's just the Chinese. I don't know that there's a country that produces terrorists that we haven't picked up scores of them from those countries, and why are they sending them here? So I do think that there's a significant fifth column. What I don't know is, are they coordinated with each other? Is it Hezbollah here and Hamas there and the Chinese over here and some other events pushed against them? I don't know the answer to that. But I do know that we're vulnerable. And you've got the EMP piece of that, the electromagnetic pulse that could shut down so much of our electrical and our network and our communications, which we're more and more vulnerable to. Just every day we're more vulnerable to that. And by the way, the World Economic Forum and the Biden administration wants us to go to electronic currency, and they want the electronics to run everything. If they can do that, if we can't heat our house, run our air conditioner, run our refrigerator, keep our meat in the freezer, and then we can't drive our car, we can't run our lawnmower or our weed blower, all those things, we're subject to somebody clicking a mouse somewhere that can shut us down, shut us off, or detonate an EMP, that there are a series of them that would shut us down substantially. And so that's why you're seeing people that are figuring out how to live off the grid. A lot of that is go back to the old ways, can your food, preserve your food, have a way to have a generator, but that fuel for that's only going to last so long. But I am concerned that there will be some kind of hit. And when after September 11th, if we had Robert Mueller was the director of the FBI, and he ordered them not to monitor the imams in the mosques, when all they had to do was go sit there, say, run a tape recorder, take notes, and listen. They could figure out where all this heat's coming from, or a lot of it was coming from. Some of it was behind closed doors, but a lot of it was right out there in the open.
Oh, we played a ton of clips last night from imams, many of them in America, talking about jihad and how it's their calling and it's in their hadiths, in their Quran. I mean, this is going on in the mosque all over America. You know, we had a mosque down the road, still there, but we had one down the road being led by Yasser Qadi a few years ago. And I said to local law enforcement, do you guys know who this guy is? Yasser Qadi? He's like a rock star in the Islamic world on a global scale. He's been banned from going into parts of Europe, according to numerous reports, because of who he's tied to. He's hanging out with Linda Saussure, you know, and the things that she's saying about President Trump in the White House. He's bringing Siraj Wahhaj to his mosque. That's an unindicted co-conspirator in the bombing of the World Trade Center. And the local law enforcement said, no, we had no idea who the imam is down there, nor what he's saying, nor who he's bringing in. And I said, well, why? And they said, because under federal law, we're not allowed to monitor them or have anything in concern with them. We can't do anything even if we knew who they were. And I'm thinking, well, that's just wrong, because I'm not interested in going after people we get accused of being Islamophobic or whatever, but their ideology, as we just heard from a former Muslim who was in the government consulting and trying to help the government deal with terrorism, is explaining this is not just about a religion. This is their ideology and worldview. That means that mosque is more than a place of worship. It's a seat of government. It is a training facility. And in some cases, it's an armory. We know that the police raided a mosque in Europe, in France, after some terrorist attacks. And the police it's in press reports we've shown on the screen, are saying we found military-grade weaponry in some of these mosques, for Pete's sake. So I'm very, we got, again, Dave Gobbets, who've now gone into 425 of these mosques undercover, and yet we hardly hear a bleep. Now we see that they're building a 402-acre compound in Plano, Texas, epic. They got one going on, a facility in Irving we showed last night, a whole neighborhood, their mosque. They got Lionel Lakes, they're trying to do what they're doing up there. They've got a humongous one in California we just showed tonight. This is a national trend. And our guest tonight, Hadia, said, if this is what you want to see in America, then just know what it's going to mean. And it's going to mean you have a women being abused, who are being divorced, who don't have any civil rights, who have no inheritance, no part in the divorce. You're done. You're out. You're going to see honor killings. You're going to see honor beatings. You're going to see childhood, quote, marriages. And then you add in free speech. They're going to come after us like they do in the UK and say, as someone in the UK, we played the video of this man simply showing after October 7th, Hamas flags or Palestinian flags flying in his neighborhood. This was the day or two after October 7th. And he says, this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. We just had people murdered in Israel and they want to fly their flags here in the UK. This is not acceptable. The next video, we played his video. He didn't threaten anyone. The next video we play is someone from his family filming him being arrested for simply posting that video. That's coming to America if we let these people penetrate Congress with all of the Hezbollah, Iranian, Muslim Brotherhood money. What say you?
Well, I say beheading is part of that. And just thinking as I'm listening, that's a pretty good rendition that when on September 11th, they had Somalis that worked in the hospitals in Minneapolis. And they were reportedly, and I got this from a very high report, they were dancing up and down the hallways in the hospital celebrating the attack on us on September 11th. And that's just fairly newly arriving immigrants in Minneapolis. Another thing that comes to mind as I'm listening here, and you talked about the breadth of it, they beheaded a priest in Rouen, France. And it's a town there in Normandy. And I went there. I just thought, I've got to go in this place where it's so evil that if they would behead a priest on the altar. And so I set it up to go there, and they told me, well, you can't go because that church is locked up and you can't go there. I said, I'm going anyway. If I have to stand outside the gates and pray, that's what I'm doing. But I want to stand on that ground where they would behead a priest. And it had been months since that church had been closed. When I arrived there, I didn't realize, but that was the day that they were going to open that church back up again, a Catholic church. And the bishop had come down, and he was at the time walking all through town, blessing every building that there was and praying and around the way. That was about a 2-hour procession. And then he came to the gates of the church that had a new chain and a new padlock on it to open that church up and go in and consecrate the church. And the mayor of that city came to, I'm standing outside on the fence. He's on the inside. He came to me and he said, you're not going to cause any trouble here. And I said, I'm here to pray, and I'm here to be respectfully remembering what happened in this place and try to understand it. And he told me that it didn't have anything to do with religion. It was just a couple of Arabic boys that were out of control, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Whatever there was, they were both Muslims. They beheaded a priest on the altar, and by the way, he told me they didn't really behead him because they didn't have his head completely cut off, just almost.
Okay.
Bad it was. That guy was a communist, by the way. He was a socialist mayor of the town. But they invited me in anyway into that church for the service, and they sat me on the side of the altar within about, I'll say, 8 feet of where that priest was murdered and where his blood was spilled. And the service was about 2 hours long. It was all in French. I couldn't understand a word, although I can follow some of the liturgy because I am Catholic. And it just was one of the most powerful religious experiences that I have had. It's that evil was being scrubbed out of that church. But what a memory for them to all have every day when they walk in that place. Oh. That's the kind of thing that's driven. And if you look back into the history of the anti-Semitism of Muhammad, when he took out the 3 Jewish tribes there in Medina, and in the last tribe, they thought they were going to get turned loose across the desert like the other 2 tribes did, where they got stripped and sent out with nothing. nobody's heard from them again. They probably died in the desert. But the last tribe surrendered, thinking that they were going to get treated the same way, and it was their only chance. Well, they put them down in this valley. They would march, and I believe it was 9 men over the hill, and then behead those 9, then go get 9 more, 9 more. I think there are ranks of 3, 3, and 3, as I remember it. And there was around 700 to 900 Jewish men that were executed under the orders that, under the authority of the officer whom Muhammad had given the authority to execute them all. And of course, they took the women and turned them into concubines, and the children into slaves.
Final video tonight, which really helps us understand where we're going if we let this grow, which is what our last guest, former Muslim attorney, working in our government for 20 years to try to stop. This is what's coming here. This is from over in the UK. This is GBN News. Listen to what they're reporting as what is being proposed in the UK.
Welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. Now, the Labour-ran Rushmore Borough Council has sparked outrage by proposing a sweeping injunction that could see Christian street preachers imprisoned for up to 2 years, and if the injunction is breached. Now, over claims of causing offence or distress. Now, under the proposed terms, Christians will be banned from praying for individuals, handing out religious leaflets or Bibles by hand, and laying hands on people in prayer, even with their permission.
Wow. Well, that's coming to America if Americans don't understand the power of money. And there'll be as many, I hate to say it, in the uniparty, that will grab this money up and do the bidding for these groups that really, I call many of these Islamists, I've referred to them as the junkyard dogs. The communists and the Islamists are the junkyard dogs of the globalists to destroy Western society and take down our freedoms. And when the globalists are done using them, then they're going to say, in my opinion, what they'll say is, we got to deal with all the extremists. We got to deal with the extreme left. We got to deal with the extremism in Islam. We've got to deal with the extremist Christians. We got to deal with the extremist Jews. And they're going to then regulate everybody, right? But they're going to use this red-green axis, the red being the Marxists, the green being the Islamists, to de-Westernize us, to de-Christianize the West, tear down our liberties and freedoms, and then they'll remake it. And, I mean, this is what else is Build Back Better about? Build Back Better? I mean, this is about destroy it and then remake it in a new system. And if we're not watching what's happening in Europe and the UK, then we don't understand what it is they're trying to do here. Because they're doing it over there a few years ahead of us, but it won't take long to catch up. And my concern in closing with you, Congressman, is that the MAGA movement will have no real leader after Donald Trump. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned that many of these people that were never Trumpers, some of them, sadly, who got in around him during his first term, some that maybe were marched out in the last few hours here as not being very loyal. I'm afraid there's too many people around him that are only interested in the pragmatism of the moment, getting into the White House now. But as soon as President Trump is gone, a lot of these so-called people that are MAGA, we'll never hear MAGA from them. The base is MAGA. The grassroots is MAGA. They want borders closed. They were MAGA before MAGA was cool. If you're seeing the old Barbara Mandrell song, these people were MAGA before MAGA was even around. Fix the borders, English only, lower our taxes, smaller government, cut the waste. And when President Trump is gone, I'm afraid what will be left for the Republican Party is going to be a lot of the Paul Ryan types. What say you?
Well, and I hope that's not the case. And I'm looking at J.D. Vance, whom I don't know. I have not met him. But it looks to me like he could be the successor, the heir apparent to Trump. And he's going to get 4 years of training to get to that point. And he or somebody else needs to step forward. You're right. I'm interested in how you describe the red-green axis and how they would like to take us apart, carve us up, and part us out, and then get rid of the extremists on either side. I would describe that similar to that. Is that I've got a book over here on my shoulder that's called it's called Shadow World. It's by Colonel Bob Chandler. He's been a Cold Warrior for 45 years. He's since passed away, and I helped him with the book. But he said, he starts in the chapter 7, and he says, they were a bunch of guys sitting around a table at the Army Navy Club, Washington, D.C., ready to celebrate the victory in the Cold War. They raised their glasses to celebrate, and Paul Nitze, who was the father of the mutually assured destruction strategy, the MAD strategy of we'll point our missiles at you, you at us, and nobody will pull the trigger and we'll have peace. Some successful, actually, to a significant degree. But before they could toast, he said, just a minute, hold it. Don't be too quick to celebrate a victory in this Cold War, because nobody likes the big kid on the block. And soon you will see the coalition of countries like Russia, China, a large Islamic country, and he said maybe India, line up in a coalition to confront the United States. And he's been ever so right on that. The military operations between Russia, China, and Iran have taken place several times by now. So here we are, as I said earlier, the flagship of Western civilization. But the three forces, you identified two, and the other one we were supposed to know, and we do. But you've got the Marxists, the red, you've got the Muslims, and especially the Islamists, the green, and then here we are, free enterprise Western civilization. Those three forces are competing in the world for dominance. And I don't see how, well, I guess I can't look into that crystal ball, but the force of Marxism and the force of the green, the Islamists, and then you have the World Economic Forum sitting in the middle, which really represent the Uniparty.
Yes.
And the Uniparty thinks they can manage the world with their economics and their rules and their technology, and they think they can also suspend their own aging process, live forever, which makes them gods in their own mind. So if this whole thing gets taken down, if they take down the United States of America and Western civilization, then there will be a battle royal between the Marxists, the Muslims, and the Uniparty people.
Absolutely.
That'll shake out. We won't live to see that. But the forces in the world, there is no force for good remaining if Western civilization goes down.
100%. 100%. You and I could talk for hours. I appreciate your time tonight. I look forward to having you back, and I hope people will go to steveking.com. Can they get your book, Walking Through Fire, at steveking.com?
Yes, they can. Just go to steveking.com, and I've still got an inventory here of not very many books, but I've got enough. And I'll autograph a book. Anything that comes out of here at steveking.com, I'll autograph it and ship it to you with these hands right here.
Excellent.
Otherwise, you'll go Amazon or Books A Million or any place books are sold.
Excellent. Well, Congressman, we look forward to having you back. Thank you for being so generous with your time and all that you stood for when you were there, taking on the issue of life, the sanctity of life, border security, so many things to underpin our Judeo-Christian republic. Thank you for that. You know, so many Americans sadly have been taught we're a democracy, which is really the founder saw, as you know, as mobocracy, rule of the 51%. But yet we're a constitutional republic. And I love that quote when William Blackstone, one of the leading scholars of the founders, was asked, what is a constitutional republic? He said, what the divine has ruled on, we don't rule against. And so when you think about the fact that those that embrace a Judeo-Christian worldview, we are the ones that are not the threat. You know, Biden always said that people, that Christians and people that were acting out their Judeo-Christian worldview, that we were a threat to democracy. And people would say, no, we're not. And I said, no, we actually are a threat to democracy as he defines it, because he means the rule of the 51%, the collective, socialism. And you bet we are, because we're defending the constitutional republic, which says, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not covet, private property. If they can get us to turn on our own foundation through this, dialectical materialism, we will end up where we hate our own country's foundation, because we will teach a whole generation or more to hate their own history, heritage, patriotism, standing for the flag, you know, the national anthem, God and country, family, a patriarchal society. They'll get where they hate it so much that only do they want those things to change, those values, they want to destroy the underpinning of our republic, our constitutional republic, our Judeo-Christian worldview. And that's what we're seeing, this eradication of it. So as, Khrushchev said to the Secretary of Agriculture during the I think it was the Eisenhower years, he said, your kids will fall over into our hands like overripe fruit. Well, that's what's about to happen. But we've got to maintain that republic. And that's what you were doing when you defend the borders, our language, or Michael Savage says border, language, culture, and then the life, sanctity of life. That's what you were doing. And I don't think many, I hate to say it, I don't think many members of Congress on the House side or on the Senate side understand this worldview war. I really don't. Closing comment?
It seemed pretty simple to me. It was just hard to find people that would do it. And but I was called to that task. And people would say, well, thank you for your courage for standing up for our values. And I said, it's not courage. If you believe, if you have conviction, it's not courage. But if I went against my values, I wouldn't have enough courage to go against my values. And those values were steeped within me. And of course, they came out of the faith training and the family training and just sense too. And if you understand what made America great, and you see how things are playing out, I don't think you had to have a crystal ball to see where this was going to go. I remember when there was a coyote, a woman who was smuggling a young girl into Texas going on the way to Virginia. And they intercepted her, identified her as not the mother, the coyote, and locked her up. And then the government took this girl and delivered her to her illegal alien mother in Virginia. And Judge Andrew Hanen wrote, thus completing the crime of illegal immigration. The federal government completed the crime. I was lit up by that about 2007. Now it's happened hundreds of thousands of times. Our federal government is completing the crime of illegal immigration by meeting people at the border and shuffling them wherever they want to go. And I've seen it and I witnessed it. And just another piece, just an axiom is this, that if you bring somebody into your country, whatever country it is, from another culture, you are actually and always importing their culture with them. And if they get assimilated, if they're not surrounded by people of their same culture, if they get assimilated, then that's fine. But what they tend to do when the numbers grow, the more the numbers are, the more they create this ethnic enclave. Then they reproduce their own country in that ethnic enclave. It's no longer an assimilation process. And so the shift in the culture in the country then shifts because of the massive numbers of legal and illegal immigrants that come in. And assimilation is a dirty word to so many of them on the left and so many of the newer arriving immigrants too. And they've been trained, the left has trained people to hate assimilation. But with assimilation, we've been very, very successful. And we need to bring that back again and promote assimilation in all walks of life. All you have to do is start with and go, we are all God's children. God wants us to respect the rule of law and his law. And if we do those things, then the world works right, and the economy prospers, families prosper, and the next generations have far more hope. Which, by the way, I think the next generations do have hope. And this election of Donald Trump brings that optimism out, I think, in so many of us, Brannon.
Absolutely. Well, we were on the verge. We were just about to tip into, I think, something that maybe we couldn't recover from. We've got some time providentially given to us. And we have to do it right and use it right. And that's why we bring people on like you to help educate us and encourage us to keep standing up for those principles that can preserve liberty and freedom for a few more generations at least or more. SteveKing.com, SteveKing.com. Congressman King, thank you again for being with us.
My pleasure. Look forward to coming back, Brannon. Appreciate you.
You can count on it. Look forward to having you back. Congressman Steve King checking in. I hope you get his book, Walking Through Fire, SteveKing.com. All right, folks, before we close tonight, look who's awake. Glad you could join us. Back from Sleepy Land? How was it? You woke up just in time to be able to go back to sleep. Yeah. I swish with this every day. It's called Numi, and it's loaded with glutathione. Glutathione, it helps to detox your cells. Glutathione, swishforlife.com, swishforlife.com. Studies show it may actually remove mercury from your brain, helping prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. So, I do the Gatatana every day. I do my Bella Grace, and I do my Numi. So again, this is not a joke. This is backed. Glutathione, 162,000 studies. 162,000 studies at PubMed on glutathione. Everything we promote, folks, is backed by science. It's not a joke. Swishforlife.com. Hey, as we close, you can roll the music. Here we are, the business cards. Dolly loves these business cards. We have now sent out, how many, Logan, or Caleb? Well, you said like 12,000 the other day. You lost count? All right, well, there you go. We've sent out over 10,000, somewhere around 12,000, he said initially, but now he's lost count. Get your free packet. Get your free packet at worldviewstore.com, Worldview Store. Pass these out, 20 of them for free. Pass them out. Introduce people. to our network, won't you? Worldviewstore.com. Oh, while you're there, check out the freeze-dried food. We got lots of freeze-dried food, 3 month, 6 month, a year, emergency supplies, medical kits, sutures, so much more. Worldviewstore.com. Roll the music. Let's call it a night. And of course, one of our biggest sponsors next to Bella Grace is the foundation, worldviewfoundation.com. That helps us push out free shows, keeps us from having to put it behind the player behind a paywall. We don't want to put the player behind a paywall. We want to keep this out here for everybody, even those who can't afford to support us. We want them to be able to get this information as well. We want to minister to them, equip them, encourage them. But if you can support us, folks, this is what helps us push it out for free. Our bandwidth bill and storage bill for these files is around $8,000 a month. $8,000 a month. Not to count all the free apps we have built. Free content, free apps, free distribution platforms. We need your help. Worldviewfoundation.com. Worldviewfoundation.com. Lord willing, I'll see you Sunday night as I continue teaching through the book of Revelation. Revelation chapter 14. We should be able to wrap that up Sunday night, right here, 8 p.m. Central Time, Sunday night, worldviewtube.com. May God save America. Take care.
Faith, spiritual values, moral issues, government, economy, education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brannon Howse.
And welcome. Glad you are with us on this. What's the date today? April 4th, 2025, April 4th, 2025. We're going to be joined by Dr. Andy Woods and Aaron Lavarco. Of course, they're going to be with me as keynote speakers at our upcoming Worldview Radio Understanding the Times rally on Tuesday evening, April 15th. Again, we now have over 1,000 registered between on the phone, for those who like to do that, and online. We prefer you register online, but if you don't have the ability to do that, you can certainly use our phone number. But other than that, you can register online for this event. It is absolutely free, but we need to know how many are going to attend so we can put out enough chairs. Worldviewtube.com/events. Worldviewtube.com/events. If you can't be with us live in person, you can certainly stream it if you're a member of our vault. Full details, worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault. Aaron Lavarco, our reporter from Israel, who is in America, I think he's in Arizona right now, sent me a map this morning, and the map shows basically the Iran now being surrounded. It looks like we have Iran being absolutely surrounded. So I want to talk a little bit about this and where we're going. Let's get to it with Aaron Lavarco and Dr. Andy Woods. Guys, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
All right, Aaron, where are you at? You in Arizona? Have that right?
I am in Tucson, Arizona, correct, yes.
Look at that, Tucson, Arizona. Well, you sent me this map. Want to explain it to our audience? What's going on?
Well, it's as clear, crystal clear as can be. There we have in the middle Iran, and look at the amount of aircraft, battleships, aircraft carriers, not to mention the at least 50,000 infantry that have been placed in the region. Weapons, supplies in the thousands of tons, tens of thousands of tons. So at first, at least, this is a strategic message to the Iranian people. This is crystal clear to them. We are ready. We have you surrounded. We are closing in on you, and our threats are going to be carried out. All you have to do is come to the negotiating table and dismantle any potential nuclear capability of massing weapons. Up until now, the Iranians have kind of laughed, scorned Donald Trump, even said that the Americans in the sea, in the Navy, are very weak. I don't know where that report came from. One thing, interestingly, that happened just in the last kind of few hours, the Iranians have pulled out all of their soldiers and capabilities from Yemen. They have decided to pull them out. Now, I don't know whether that's a surrender to the Americans, whether they're making a statement saying the Americans are pounding us, they are crippling us, we don't want our soldiers on the ground there anymore, or we're going to need them back at home. So I mentioned this a number of times in the last few days, Brannon. Everyone is on their seats waiting. Donald Trump's patience is getting thin. Just an hour ago, a report came out also that what he is proposing for the Iranians is what he called the Libya plan. The idea what the Libyans did a number of years ago, they did hand over all their weapons of mass destruction to the authorities, those who are in charge. How do you say it? The IAEA, those who monitor nuclear capabilities and weapons and centrifuges and things like that. So he's actually placed his plan on the table, hand over like the Libyans did, and there's not going to be an escalation. There's not going to be a war. We're not going to need to do this. But if they don't, what's going to happen? Look at the amount of capabilities that the Americans have, and that's just America. There's been all kinds of talk. Will America go alone? Will Israel join in? Pretty much all the reports that I'm reading and seeing is that it looks like Israel definitely will join in, no question.